All right, I believe we are live. One quick, I'm sure many of you do too. And I was on the regular one, so I wanted you guys to get crisp, clear audio and visuals as well. So I switched. I don't know if it disconnected or not. It looks like I'm live. Yeah, I'm live, right? Anybody wanna throw something in the chat box just to make sure I'm live? Oh yeah, we're good. Awesome. All right. Well, let's talk about UFC 241. For those who have been viewing the couple of videos that I took out, mainly just recaps about the previous UFC events, it's mostly been a reaction, right? Reaction to the news. So basically, I have something to say, right? I have some thoughts about the action, what went down, and then after that, I take some questions. Well, this is a little different. It's my first time doing a preview of some sort. I'll find a creative name for it, but for now, I don't know. I don't really have anything pending that I want to say, so just fire questions and I'll answer them as we go. um, this video is not brought to you by Red Stripe, but it is Friday and the body knows it, so I'm gonna have a brew in during this video, to keep hydrated. So let's do this. All right, let's keep it UFC 241 centered. Fire any questions that you want. I have the chat right here popped up. Um, what's the next step, Danny? I keep getting the same question over and over. I've addressed this also on previous videos that I've made just because I keep getting it, and also on my Twitter when people have tweeted me asking the same thing. I'm still with MMA fighting. I'm not going anywhere. I love working for MMA fighting. I'm excited for what's next as far as like what we're going to be doing next. You've already seen, you've gotten some good taste of what we've done. We recently took out the new MMA show. A lot of people seem to dig it. It's good stuff, very informative, all in one video, which I very like. Very very solid recap of what's going on in the world of mixed martial arts. So make sure to check that out. Also, yeah, I mean we've got great stuff coming, and we're doing great stuff. Proof is just check out all our UFC 241 coverage. We have a team down there. Um, but yeah, what's next for me? I'm still with MMA fighting, and I am not going anywhere. Hey, live, yup, thumbs up. All right. Well, if you guys are not gonna throw questions, I'm gonna start rambling here, and we'll answer questions as we go. All right. So let's start from top to bottom. UFC 241 taking place in Anaheim, California. We got Daniel Cormier defending his heavyweight title against former UFC champ Stipe Miocic. Obviously, a rematch that we saw in July of 2018. Uh, yeah, this is going to be a good card. This is a pretty good card. This feels like a big card. I feel like the last time I thought I got a feeling of a big card was UFC 239. No disrespect to the people that fought at UFC 240, but other than Frankie Edgar versus Max Holloway, I don't really have a lot of recollection of what went on that night. Um, this is a big card. Obviously the return of Nate Diaz is huge. That itself could, uh, you know, carry its. He himself could carry his own card. He doesn't really need a championship bout on top of him to mark his return. And but yeah, other than that, I mean, this is a pretty good card. What fight am I looking forward to the most mañana? Pamela Yvette Goss asking. Obviously, the return of Nate Diaz. As I said, I mean, this guy hasn't fought since the epic bouts of with Conor McGregor, and people forget. But at that time, Conor McGregor wasn't really the fighter who we've seen nowadays, where it's like barely a fighter that's active, a fighter that's training. He was there. I mean, after that, remember he went on to fight Eddie Alvarez and become a champ, and now we're in this champ era. I mean, that was peak Conor McGregor of being a competitor, of being, in on the media all the time. Now he's a little bit away from it. That was peak Conor McGregor as far as competition, as far as hype. I would say as far as competition, when he fought Dustin Poirier and he was fought Chad Mendes and he was taking all those fights, that was peak competition. But I would say when he fought Diaz, it was like also still in his peak competition, but at the same time, kind of peak hype. Obviously, I think as time went on, we saw that the hype kept growing, obviously, with the Mayweather bout, but the competition one dropped, and that's the one that we've been waiting for Conor McGregor to bring back. But I know I'm going on a little rant here, but yeah, I mean, think about that. Nate Diaz hasn't fought since then. It's almost been 3 years. It's ridiculous. Yet he's one of the most talked about fighters in the UFC and in MMA. Period. And here he is making a return. We got teased a little bit when he was going to fight Dustin Poirier. That would have been amazing, but that didn't go down. Poirier got injured, and then Diaz just kind of wasn't interested in taking another opponent and just left. And here he is. So thank God for Anthony Pettis, because whatever Nate Diaz saw in him, it was enough for him to warrant a comeback. Because I'm pretty sure he was. He would have been okay sitting out, and we don't want that. I'm a huge fan of the Diaz brothers. I'm a huge fan of their fighting styles, so I want to see that as often as I can. And hopefully this is another, or after this fight, it's not another 3-year hiatus. But yeah, that's the fight I'm most excited for. I think um, Anthony Pettis offers a lot of interesting challenges. I think he can challenge Nate Diaz competitively. I mean, talk about the leg kicks. That's been a huge weakness of the Diaz brothers throughout their entire career. And Anthony Pettis just happens to be pretty good at kicks. So yeah, from a stylistic standpoint, that is a fantastic fight that I'm looking forward to. And then also you got just the hype, right? You got, Anthony Pettis, he's got his own swag, he's got his own style. And then you got freaking Nate Diaz, 209. And there is some bad blood there, although I do think deep down they do respect each other. And I think Nate more Anthony Pettis has made clear of that, saying that he respects Nate Diaz and is a fighter. By the way, if you're hearing that, this is crazy Brooklyn and it's a weekend, so there's no way of getting around that. You're gonna hear tons of noise. But anyways, that's the fight I'm looking forward to the most. But there are some other good gems there as well. Obviously, the main event, I think I've come around. I wasn't a big fan of the main event when it got booked. I would have liked to see Stipe prove he's got a few other tools, a few other things heading into the rematch, build some hype. But now that it's here, I want to see it. And I saw the first fight. It was pretty good, pretty competitive. Stipe looked good, so I'm excited also for that fight. But it's pretty clear that Nate Diaz versus Anthony Pettis is the real winner here. That's the fight that's got me the most excited here. All right. Do you think Darian Marcus asks, do you think a Pettis versus Masvidal will be possible if Pettis wins? You know what? I did not think about that. I have not thought about it. It has not crossed my mind. But now that you mention it, yes, 100%. If you look at, I encourage you to go over to the MMA Fighting's YouTube page. And if you look at the last scrum he did with the media, I don't know if he's spoken to the media since. Of course, I'm talking about Masvidal here. He said he wanted a title shot. I've been grinding for 16 years. My whole career, I was underappreciated. He did not say that. Those weren't his exact words, but this is what kind of like the message. I've worked so hard. I'm finally here. Why would I risk taking a fight with Leon Edwards? Would I risk taking another fight that's not for the title when if I lose everything? And right now, I'm in the best position I can possibly be to earn a title shot. However, he did say that if the UFC makes a very handsome fee, for a very handsome fee, he will step in there and fight another man that does not hold UFC gold. Could that be Anthony Pettis? I think so. See, we know what happened when a good personality that was underexposed, like Nate Diaz, fought Conor McGregor, a superstar, right? All of a sudden, you duplicate that, and all of a sudden, you got another superstar in Nate Diaz. Well, Nate Diaz is a superstar now, and I feel like Anthony Pettis, very exciting fighter. I mean, he had a show on MTV. I think he was part of True Life, if I'm not mistaken. Way back when MTV was the god of entertainment. And Anthony Pettis, man, he's a very charismatic guy. People like him, good looking guy. Obviously his style is super exciting. I think if he fights Nate Diaz and brings him the exposure that's been bringing him, I mean, you look at their countdown, people tune in because of Nate Diaz, 1.5 million views. But guess what? There's tons of B-roll of Anthony Pettis there. There's interviews with Anthony Pettis. So he is getting a lot of exposure here. And if he's able to do something amazing, say get like a crazy knockout like Josh Thompson did against Nate Diaz, and then all of a sudden Anthony Pettis, becomes the new thing, becomes the hype. I don't see why Masvidal would say no to that fight. It's a fan-friendly fight. He's not fighting a huge dude. He's fighting a former lightweight. So in that sense, it's a favorable matchup. He's not going to fight a guy that's going to wrestle him. He's going to fight a guy that strikes, with him, and it'll be a big fight. So yeah, if I think that would be the next best option, if not fighting for the title, of course. So yeah, I can totally see Masvidal versus Pettis if Pettis gets a win over Nate Diaz. To answer your question, card is stacked. I've seen better cards. UFC 239 was a lot more stacked, but yes, this is a good card. All right. Why does everyone always boo DC? I thought people liked them. I don't know. I haven't really seen anybody boo DC. I mean, I'm sure there are some. Everybody, even the most likable guy, like say like an Nate Diaz or whatever, or even Connor, I did speak. Before I guess some of his legal troubles that have turned people off. Everybody's always gonna have haters, but right now I don't think anybody hates DC. Um, I think DC is one of the most liked guys in the UFC nowadays. He puts on exciting fights. He takes on big challenges. He's great in media. He does entertaining interviews and whatnot. Yeah, I would disagree with that question, Carter. But if you boo DC, I think that's just part of it. There are haters everywhere. So all right. Diaz looked big at 170. Yeah, yeah. I mean, when was the last time Nate Diaz fought at 155? You got to keep that in mind. Remember, Dustin Poirier said, like, hey, it took me a few fights to become a real lightweight when I was moving up from lightweight from 145 to 155, right? That wasn't only the fights. Like, it didn't take him just a few fights. The fights are just representative of the time, right? And sure, Nate Diaz has been inactive, but he hasn't been forced to cut to 155 in a while, meaning he's going to retain some weight when he works out. Some of that muscle he keeps. He doesn't have to cut all the way down. I'll tell you, last time he fought at 155, it was against Connor, right? Or was that at 170? Let's see. All right. Yeah, that was a welterweight bout. Both fights with Conor McGregor were welterweight bouts. So the last time he fought at lightweight was against Michael Johnson in 2015. Jesus Christ. I mean, it's almost 2020. So think about that. It's been a minute. So yes, naturally, Nate Diaz is going to look bigger nowadays than ever. I mean, he's more of a welterweight now probably, and he is a lightweight, to be honest. Yeah, but yeah, he's looking bigger. Good for him. Do you expect Dre the Great asks, do you expect any of three main fights to go to the ground? So the three main fights are Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa, which I haven't even talked about. Jesus Christ. I'm so excited for that fight. That is a good fight. Then obviously Anthony Pettis versus Nate Diaz and Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic. I'll tell you what, the fight that's most likely to hit the ground out of those three, that's a good one. I think the least likely is Anthony Pettis versus Nate Diaz. Now, remember, when Daniel Cormier fought Stipe Miocic the first time, Stipe actually took him down the first and quite early. He got back up, but nonetheless, a takedown. Yoel Romero has amazing wrestling, but he's also a big fan of his own power. I mean, he understands he can knock people out, so he's not afraid. And even if he's losing, he's not afraid to linger in the striking department because he knows he only needs that one shot to put you away. And that'll get him a nice bonus, some excitement. It's a lot easier than and a lot effortless than taking somebody down, right? So I think you know what I'll go out there and say that Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic is most likely to hit the ground first than any of the three main fights. Good question, by the way. That is a tough one. Good stuff, Dre the Great. All right. I don't even know if this is a question, more of a comment. John Holmes asks, love DC, but thought Stipe was winning the fight till the inaberrant eye poke. If there's no accidental eye poke, can Stipe stay on the outside and pick him apart like earlier in the first fight? You know what? I've that is a good question because I haven't really thought about a whole lot about the eye pokes until because they don't get brought up anymore because whenever they get brought up to Stipe, which Stipe is the only one that can ignite that type of conversation. Why? Because you ask Cormier and he's gonna say nope. They didn't. I knocked them out clean. They had nothing to do with it. All right, you move on. What else is there to ask him about that? Stipe is the one that can fuel that storyline. And whenever he's been asked about it, at least from the interview I saw, our own Damon Martin at MMAfighting.com interviewed him, and said, "Hey, what about the eye pokes?" And he said, "Next question." What about the eye pokes? Next question. He said it like 3 times, and he just kept saying, "Next question." Um, that to me is interesting because if you really want to put something behind you, right? You just go, "Oh yeah, no, they were nothing. I was fine." And that doesn't get asked about ever again, right? But the fact that you refuse to talk about it means doesn't necessarily mean, but it could mean that there's something there, right? So I think there might be something to the eye pokes. Were they enough um to cause DC to win, to cause DC to lose and get to cause Stipe to lose and get knocked out? I don't think so. I think if I'm a betting man, I'm betting my money on Daniel Cormier. I think he pulls this one off. Um, do I think Stipe maybe does better than the first fight? Yeah, probably. Would I be surprised if he wins? No. But yeah, I don't know how much the eye pokes took into account there. If to answer your question, John Holmes. It's a good question though, and it's something worth looking into this fight because if you look at it, nothing has really changed. Cormier is still the same Cormier, right? Maybe he feels a little bit more comfortable at heavyweight since that was his first fight there, right? And all of a sudden he's fought Steep and he's fought Derek Lewis since his move up. So you could see maybe a little bit better performance, a little bit more comfortable at heavyweight as far as DC side goes. On Stipe, on the other hand, he's been off. I mean, other than being more refreshed because of the break, he hasn't had to see other challenges, fight any other fighters, and sort of been forced to evolve his game in that sense. You can obviously still craft your skills and get better and add new things without having to fight somebody, but we haven't seen that obviously because he hasn't been in the cage. So nothing tells me that this fight won't look, unless there's a completely different game plan. I don't think this fight's going to look completely different. So yeah, let's see how the eye pokes. We'll see. I guess we'll have an answer on Saturday night. So yeah. All right. Another question from John Holmes. How proud was John Jones of his student becoming the master? If you had to bet the house, DC Miocic and Diaz Pettis. I actually don't think John Jones is having too much fun watching uh, DC have all the success because, in a way, that could have been John Jones. If it wasn't for all the suspensions, John Jones was the guy listed to go up to heavyweight and become that champion, right? As well as being the light heavyweight champion. But because of his layoff, because of his suspension, DC became that guy and he got that opportunity. But he got that opportunity because he was the champ at 205, right? Obviously, I think even if he wasn't a champion, he would have gone up to heavyweight. You would have probably gotten an immediate title shot, but I think that would have depended on John Jones not wanting to move up. Say DC would have lost, right? Oh, he did against John Jones. John Jones wouldn't have gotten suspended, and DC's like, all right, I want an immediate title shot at heavyweight, and then you get the champion saying, well, no, I want now an immediate title shot at heavyweight. Who do you think the UFC is gonna pick there? Probably the champion. Nothing against DC. It's just that's just the way it goes. Champ, two belts. In the poster you get belt, right? Belt versus belt. I mean, it's the best sell, right? So yeah, in a way, I think John Jones has to see that and be like, damn, that could have been me, right? But I mean, he's still young. He's still got plenty of time. All right. Pamela Yvette Goss asks again. Nate is king. So excited to see him again. Do you think we'll see Nick in his corner? Not even Nate Diaz knows because he was asked about this in the scrum in the only scrum he did because he didn't show up for media day, but in the open workout scrums he was asked about this and he's like, oh yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't even know if Nick knows, but hopefully, man, those two are a good pairing and it's nice seeing that brotherly bond. Is obviously very distinct in most brotherly bonds, but that's because they're very distinct people themselves. But they have a good connection and I love how loyal they are to each other and how much they care about each other. It's nice to see. It's cool. So hopefully, yeah, Nick Diaz in the corner would be nice. But my guess is as good as yours. All right, I've got a bunch of comments, not really questions. I mean, the list goes on, but so I'll skip a couple. Let's see. Steep is the underdog. Yes. Um, let's see. Oh wait, I skipped some. Oop. Nick won't be in his corner. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's been an official thing about that. Talk about the early prelim and prelim. All right, yeah, the prelims. So there's two prelims cards, one going on UFC Fight Pass, that thing's still around, and ESPN, the actual network channel. So, um, you know what? These prelims are not as stacked as we've seen for other cards. I think this is mainly the main something because often, especially nowadays, it used to be now that the best fights were on the main card. Period. That for a long time hasn't been necessarily true. You often see fights that are in the prelims, even Fight Pass prelims, even ESPN prelims, that are worthy enough to be on the main card and that should be on the main card. And you could actually make a very good case that some of those fights should be bumped up and some other fights bumped down. But I think they do have to put on exciting fights. There's a whole strategy that people believe, right? The last fight of the prelim should be really good because that way you get people excited about the pay-per-view, etc. But um, looking at this card, I feel like most of the fights that are very good are on the main card, and I think the prelims fights are the prelims fight. There are a few interesting ones though. Drakkar Close is a very exciting fighter. I like watching him fight. A Sun Sao versus Corey Sandhagen should be a fun fight as well. Kyoho Kang versus Brandon Davis, that's a sleeper one. That should be exciting as well. Hannah Cipher versus Jody Esquibel, that should be a good one too. Hannah Cipher is a very interesting character. She's known for her strength, but Jody Esquivel is a fantastic athlete, very good fighter as well. So that should be fun. And always I gotta give a shout out to my Colombians. Saina Maso taking on Shanna Dobson. Uh, for those who don't know much about Saina, obviously this is her first exposure about at least into the mainstream audience, if you want to call that. Obviously still UFC Fight Pass, but obviously the number one MMA promotion. Saina Maso has scored back-to-back like head kick knockouts during her LFA stint, which she then eventually went on to win the flyweight title there. So she's a very good prospect, very young, very rangy. Her UFC debut didn't go as planned. I believe she started a bit slow. I really do think Saina Maso, she takes her time. She's really mainly built for 5 rounds. So she definitely has to do some adjustments to cater her style to be good enough for a 3-round fight. Because all of a sudden, first round, not so great. Second round, not so great, at least in her debut. Then third round, she starts really picking up and doing really good. And then you can honestly see that, like, oh, if there would be a fourth and fifth round, wow, whoever she's fighting could potentially be in trouble. But again, you got only 15 minutes. So, yeah, interesting to see how she's adapted her style, maybe to start a little quicker. But that'll be kicking off the UFC 241 card. So I just suggest keep an eye on that fight. You might see a head kick knockout. Who knows? All right, back to the chat. Let's see. By the way, how long am I going here? So it's 23 minutes. I'll do 7 more minutes and then dip out. All right. Kron will be in Nate's corner. Yes. Kron, shout out to Kron, another very exciting UFC fighter. Good prospect. Hard to watch UFC 241 in the UK. Sucks. Sad face. That was by Richard Saville. Yeah, so you guys watch that. You guys I complain about the East Coast time because the main card starts at like what, 10 p.m. and I'm finishing work. Well, the fights itself, close to midnight, 1 a.m. And then I got to keep working a few hours after that. And then if you go, further into the time zone, people in California obviously have 3 hours before that. So, and then people in Thailand, even farther out, they probably watch that in the very morning of Sunday. So I think that's obviously the ideal timeline. That'd be great. Um, but yeah, I mean, sorry for the people in the UK. Yeah, it must suck. But hey, this is we are MMA fans, and you do live in the UK, so that's the cards you were dealt with, my friend. At least be glad that you're in a country that has, I don't know, internet and you have access to watch the card. Some others don't. Let's see. Also, wait, you guys get them for free, right? On BT Sport? Correct me in the chat, because if that's the case, you save a good buck. Trust me, you drop a lot of money here in the States on those pay-per-views. All right. How does John Jones versus DC3 not happen if DC wins tomorrow? You ask me. Yeah, that'd be the fight to make. I mean, you got the heavyweight champ versus the light heavyweight champ first of all, when's the last time we saw a light heavyweight champ fight the heavyweight champ? I mean, maybe something like a crossover with Randy Couture, because remember he was champion in both weight classes. But yeah, I mean that's unheard of, and the heavier weight classes usually sell the most. Those are the sexier per se, and you got literally the one of the most heated rivalries there. And I think what the real wrinkle that we got to add to it is that it's got to be a heavyweight. It's got to be a heavyweight. It's a bigger bet for DC, because say if DC drops down and loses, there will always be that thing where people say like, oh well, he was just better at heavyweight. He wasn't his his best self, right? Um, but yeah, if it's a heavyweight, it's a bigger gamble for DC, because if he does lose, then people are gonna be like, hey, see, John Jones was the better fighter all the time. He beat you at light heavyweight. He beat you at heavyweight. He took both of your belts. So it's definitely a bigger gamble for him. If he loses at light heavyweight, he can just go back to heavyweight and he still has a title there, right? He could say he's undefeated at heavyweight. So it is a bigger gamble for DC. I understand that, but I think it's there are questions. I really do believe that there are questions at heavyweight for John Jones for that matchup. So I believe that's where you make it. What fight are you most looking forward to in the prelims? Michael Caruso asks. Um, I kind of feel the same a little bit about all. I mean, maybe a little biased because I'm Colombian, but Sabina Masso versus Shannon Dobson. I want to see that fight. I want to see how Sabina looks. I'm really intrigued in that one. But as far as excitement for a matchup itself, Sunsao versus Corey Handsagen should be fun. So yeah, but I don't really have like a very strong feeling about a specific fight. Let's see. Danny, we need you, Shav, and Luke on MAB. Rest in peace, MAB. No, that's MAB is gone. Danny, what's up, man? Yo, nothing here. Talking to you guys. Pumped for this card tomorrow. I am too. Underrated fight in the card. Sandhagen versus Sunsao. Yep, I was just talking about it. 100%. Who's the underdog? Stipe or Cormier? Well, that's not for me to determine. That's for the odds makers. But I believe Stipe is the underdog. I mean, he got knocked out, first round knockout, in the last time they met. So he should be the underdog. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna take a couple more. We're getting close to the 30-minute mark. What do you think is next for Stipe if he loses? Oh boy, that's a tough one, and that's gonna determine a lot. Not really. It's not really gonna be defined on the way he loses or anything like that, but a lot is gonna be determined on what Daniel Cormier decides to do next. Because if DC decides to drop down to light heavyweight and fight John Jones. First of all, that fight, because of the magnitude of that fight, is going to require a long buildup. So it's not going to be something where it's like, oh, I'm dropping out down to light heavyweight. I'm fighting him in a month and a half. No, that's not going to happen. This is going to get built up. It's going to have a nice buildup to it, right? 2, he hasn't fought at 205 in a bit. So I assume, knowing Daniel Cormier, how smart of a fighter he is, he's not going to want to do a quick turnaround. He's going to take his time, diet, drop his weight a little bit. And then when he's able to reach that 205 limit as healthy as he possibly can, which I don't think, healthy is, I don't think he'll ever get there 100% healthy, but he could definitely accommodate things into making them, the best possible scenario for him to do so. And I believe that's going to take some time. So yeah, I think that fight's going to take a bit. So that means there's going to be a long layoff between that fight, recovery, and then the next time DC can potentially defend the belt, heavyweight belt. That's even if he doesn't decide to retire after fighting John Jones, win or lose. So I believe there would be an interim belt in place, or at least DC would vacate that one, and then somebody would fight for the heavyweight belt. And yes, Stipe would be coming off 2 losses to DC, 2 back-to-back losses. But if you look at the heavyweight division, a lot of top contenders are coming off losses. So I'd figured, my guess would be that Stipe, also being one of the most dominant champions in that weight class, say whatever you want about it only being 3 title defenses, it's still a fact though. I think they would put him to fight for the interim belt, maybe against Francis Ngannou, do that rematch. I'm down to watch it. Maybe against Derek Lewis, he fan-friendly fighter. that's gotten some good deal of exposure, can sell a pay-per-view. I mean, he already headlined a pay-per-view against DC. So yeah, it's going to depend a lot on what DC does. If DC decides to stay at heavyweight and defend that belt, I don't see Stipe getting another fight, at least not anytime soon. He better pick up some wins, and Ngannou's got some nice hype behind him, so he's definitely not next in line. I'm talking about Stipe, of course. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But I think what happens to Stipe next is going to depend a lot on what Daniel Cormier decides to do. That's obviously if Stipe loses. This is the scenario that uh, the viewer here asked. That's the one I'm addressing. All right. Let's see. How does Costa match up against Whittaker? Well, he first got to get past Romero, and that's a tough dude. That's a tough dude. I'm the most excited for that. Well, I just said Nate Diaz versus Anthony Pettis. All right. Those two are neck and neck. I think, the hype a little bit gets, and the Nate Diaz return kind of gets me a little bit, but Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa, I mean, this is a fantastic fight. Just two berserkers going at it. This is going to be, and those guys don't pace themselves. Like if you see Yoel Romero, he's full throttle all the time. You see Paulo Costa, full throttle all the time. This is just going to be, that's what's going to be. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in that one. But Costa, I think, something that Whittaker proved against Romero is that he's proven in several fights. He's good with speed. I think Whittaker does well against slower guys that have a lot of power. This is why the Style Bender fight is so interesting, because Style Bender is not that type of striker, right? So I think against Acosta, I think Whittaker just stays on the outside and pieces him up with the jab, movement, slip, bob, weave, ba, jab, straight right. And just kind of beat him the way he beat Yoel Romero. But Yoel Romero at least had the threat of the takedown, right? I don't think Paulo Costa offers that. So I think actually that is a very good matchup for Robert Whittaker. But you never know. I mean, Costa can land some crazy punch and put him asleep, but at the same time, Whittaker has one hell of a chin. So I think it's a favorable matchup for Whittaker. Unemployed Mario Yamasaki. Interesting name. All right. Who has the most to lose at UFC 241? By Darren Marcus. That is a fantastic question. I would honestly say Nate Diaz. It depends. If Yoel Romero loses, that'd be what? 3 back-to-back losses. I think at age 40. And yes, oh no, it wouldn't be. Oh, he beat Luke Rockhold. How can I forget that? Yeah. I think at his age, it's going to be a lot harder to get a title shot. So in that sense, you could make a case for Yoel Romero as far as like he has the most to lose here. But I honestly think Nate Diaz, because think about this. You gotta not think about like, oh, what happens if Nate Diaz loses? No, you gotta think about the opposite. What happens if Nate Diaz wins? So that's how you measure what's there at stake, right? If Nate Diaz wins, I mean, Jesus Christ, you're talking about this could potentially, and I don't agree with this, but I'm just telling you as a viewer that has seen the UFC, matchmaking and whatnot for over the last, couple of years or more, 4 or 5 years, the way they've done their matchmaking and the way the fans, suggest certain fights, that could set Nate Diaz up for a title fight at welterweight. I don't like it, but it is not crazy to think that Nate Diaz could get a title shot at welterweight if he beats Anthony Pettis, a rank contender at welterweight. Not crazy at all. Don't agree with it, but I don't think it's insane. But this could potentially set him up, again, a million other big money fights. If he loses, who knows how much then the UFC's invested in the Nate Diaz brand, who knows? Maybe Nate Diaz never fights again if he loses. So I think the person who has the most to lose here is Nate Diaz. I think it could potentially cost him a title shot. I said potentially. It could, potentially cost him his career. He could very well hang it up. I don't know. I think DC's up there as well. There are several guys. I mean, this is why this card is so good, because there's a lot at stake here for a lot of fighters. So Nate Diaz being one of them, Daniel Cormier being one of them. I think Stipe is good. I think if he'll continue fighting, and he's a great fighter. Also, if he loses to Cormier, we know Cormier days are numbered. So, once he retires, then all of a sudden, Miocic will be, back at the king of that division. So, yeah, I think it's between Nate Diaz and Daniel Cormier, who has the most to lose there. All right. Pancrase asks, "Hey Danny, you more live chats, man. Always enjoy hearing your thoughts." And well, thank you for that, Pancrase. I really appreciate it. And yes, I hope to do more of these as well. Yeah, these are fun, man. Whenever I get a chance to like get on camera and talk to you guys and answer questions and talk MMA, which I love. Obviously, this is the sport that I cover. Yeah, it's sick. It's awesome. So the more I get to do this, the better. So yeah, hopefully, I can get to do these more often for sure. Thanks for that. Okay, so back to the UK question, what we were addressing a little bit. So Justin Rogers is back. This card is free on BT Sport. So being super tired and feeling shitty the next day versus free, I don't know. That's a pretty good gamble there. I mean, depending on the weekend, I might choose to, feel a little shittier just to save some bucks. So, look, I know the UK time zone is not ideal, but if you're getting it for free, that is something right there. So it's like the yin yang. Let's see. I am a new MMA fan. I listened to interview with this Nate Diaz dude. Is he punch drunk or has he always talked the way he does? Nah, that's always been Nate Diaz, and that's just his style of speaking. Part of it is just I don't know, but don't hate on it, man. I think I don't know. I love the way that the Diaz brothers express themselves. It's very raw, very street, very genuine. Especially nowadays, where constantly you see fighters trying to put on a persona. The Diaz brothers is OG, as real as it gets. To steal a line from the UFC. So, yeah, love those dudes. Those guys are great for the sport. Did you see Dana defending Connor's latest actions? I saw the headline, but I've been busy, so I haven't actually had time to dive into the article and read whatever he had to say. So I don't want to comment on that unless I have all the info. I think that's a fair thing to do. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna take one more, and I'm out of here. Okay, so Brandon Music. If Romero wins, does he have another chance at a title shot if Whittaker wins? That is an interesting one because let's look at Yoel Romero's record here. So he fought Robert Whittaker, right? He was in a crazy streak. Let's not forget. Goes into the UFC, doesn't lose a single fight, right? Goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fight win streak. All right. And these are all KOs and wrecking people and just looking real good. Maybe except that Jack Souza fight. That's the one that got a little dicey for him. But it took him a while to get a title shot, and he did. Fought Robert Whittaker, right? Because I remember at the time there was the whole GSP thing with Michael Bisping and the title defense of Dan Henderson. So it was a tough time to get a title shot if you were a middleweight in the UFC. So understandably. So, anyways, he fights Robert Whittaker, loses a unanimous decision. It was an amazing fight, very close, but I think pretty clear Robert Whittaker won that one. I think some people feel no, actually, I think Yoel Romero really you could only make a case that he won maybe 1 or 2 rounds. It was pretty clear that Robert Whittaker won that fight. Now that I remember. Then he fights Luke Rockhold and just knocks him out, like grabs his head and punches him. That was like one of the craziest knockouts I've seen, one of the most savage knockouts I've ever seen, right? That warrants excitement and not a lot going on in the middleweight division. So he gets another title shot. Fights Robert Whittaker. This time, I actually thought he did enough to beat him. I had it scored for Yoel Romero. Very controversial fight. Still an amazing fight. One fight of the night, just as their other fight did. Obviously, granted, Yoel Romero missed weight by, I think it was 0.2 pounds. It wasn't a whole lot. Nonetheless, he took that fight from short notice because remember, he was scheduled to fight later in that year, I believe. And then, oh no, that was sorry. I'm sorry. I'm getting my things mixed up. That was for the Luke Rock fight. Yeah, he did miss weight completely. Completely fair, right? And then it was only a title fight for Robert Whittaker, or it was just a non-title bout, right? Yeah, see, it's very tough. Yoel Romero's a very exciting fighter. Obviously, it's clear that the fans like him. He goes in there and puts on amazing performances. He's world class. I think a lot of fighters when they lose title fights, you still wonder if they're top. So you wanna kind of match him up against other fighters in the same division. But I think Yoel Romero is one of those exceptions where he loses, against the champion, and yet you still know that he's the number two guy in that division. You still know he's above the other contenders, just out of even seeing his defeat, just out of type of performance that he puts on. So um I would say that if he does something very, 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 very exciting against Costa, just destroys him, gets on the mic, says something like "I love you, Robert Whittaker" or something like that, maybe. I think this fight is I think it's more likely if you also got to see what happens between Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya, right? Because the question was, if Yoel Romero wins, do you see him getting another title shot? Um, well, if Adesanya wins, yes. If Robert Whittaker wins, that's where things get dicey for him. Okay, so I think if Robert Whittaker wins, I think they will probably put him in another fight. And if he wins that one, 2-fight win streak, not a whole lot, but enough to warrant a title shot. Yeah, I can see that happening. But I think if Israel Adesanya wins, I think that's the fight to make. Also, I think if Costa wins and Israel Adesanya wins, that's the fight to make. So we'll see. Still a lot in the air. There's this matchup is depending on a lot of other matchups as well. So we'll see how that turns out. All right. Brandon Music adds that would be an epic athlete versus epic athlete battle. Yeah, that would be very exciting stuff. All right, guys. Well, I went over time. I actually said 30 minutes and we're 41 minutes in. Time flew by. I didn't even realize. So yeah, I'm gonna sign off here, but thank you so much for everybody that tuned in. Remember, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you're old, just tell a friend about it. That'll do a lot of help. And that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Again, if you took your time out of your night or day, depending on where you're from, to join me on this chat and actually throw questions, I really appreciate it. Like always, you can follow me on Twitter at Danny Segura TV, yes, as well as Instagram. I have a Facebook, but I don't use it. But if you want to give me a like there as well, it's welcome. So that's all I got. So you enjoy your Friday night or Saturday morning, depending on where you're from. And that's it. That's all I got from you guys. So thanks a lot again, and peace out.